thank you for tuning into my channel. Today I'm going to just be giving a general overview of how I use Photoshop, sort of a tour of the program, kind of a showing how I use the program, sort of the setup I use, giving a general basic tutorial of how to use some of the features that I think really help with making digital art with the program. So, because I know it can be really overwhelming at first, but it can honestly be a really simple tool to use once you get used to it and once you get into a workflow that works for you. So, the first thing you have to do, when you get into the program is make a document. I usually like to make something that's about 3,000 by 3,000 or bigger. Be wary of your computer's processing power. I have a Mac, and Macs can run Adobe programs pretty well, so it can handle it, but I wouldn't work any smaller than, say, 2,000 by 2,000 just because, then you're going to run into issues of pixelation. And since I usually am working with paintings, I prefer to have the highest quality possible so that I'm not running into issues of resolution when I'm doing detail work. So then the first thing that I do is make that a gray background, which you can also do when you're setting up the file. But as you can see now, there's just a square. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over the setup. So you might notice that your Photoshop looks different from mine. That's because I've sort of messed around with the controls. So yes, this is my custom workspace, which is called B. That's just the workspace that I've created. There's all kinds that you can have. As you can see, there's all these different things you can have open. But these are just the ones that I use when I'm doing my work. And depending on the type of thing that you use this program for, you might need all of these, some of them, or almost none of them. So keep that in mind. The program can be very overwhelming, but the odds that you're going to need anything or even some of these are very low. So generally, what you're going to want when you come into Photoshop, you're going to want to go to the window thing and check and see to the workspace. And you can either click and make sure you have painting turned on, or you can just go and manually check on these workspaces. So you'll want adjustment, brush settings, brushes, color, layers, properties, and those are pretty much all the ones that I use. And then if any of the other ones seem important to you, then you can add those. But as you can see, those are the ones I have. Color, brush settings, layers, properties. I also have swatches, gradients, patterns, which I don't actually use, adjustments, and brushes. So those will all show up on these sides. And then here's the tools. So that's how you can toggle quickly between all the different types of basic tools. So going over the different windows, there's color, which is just your basic, color selector, self-explanatory. Brush settings, which we'll get into more later. Those can be pretty complicated. As you can see, there's a lot of sub-menus, which can, again, be very overwhelming. Layers, which has lots of, again, sub-menus. Again, that can be overwhelming, and I plan to make more tutorials on how to use layers, but for now, it's just like, as in any other program, it's just basic layers with opacity and, just your line art, sketch, and color. Makes working easier. And then properties is just going to tell you some information about your canvas. And then as you work with adjustments, which just is brightness, contrast, this is more so photo editing stuff, not so much art. So it might not be applicable, but I will show in the tutorial piece I will be making today how this can really help with your work. This properties will be very helpful. Then Swatches is a place that you can easily save color schemes that are helpful. I like to take color schemes from, say, pictures off Pinterest and save them here. As you can see, I've saved this from an album cover or photographs I found, movies, Or if I have like graphic design projects I'm working on, I'll save the colors that the customer sent me here, or character colors. Then brushes, which is probably my favorite part of Photoshop. So at the top here, I have my favorite folder, but I also have like hundreds of brushes saved. I have so many. I will link in the description some of my favorite brush packs. I only use free ones because I would never pay for a brush pack. Why would you? You could just make them yourself or find them online. So usually I find them on DeviantArt because that's where most people upload them, but I will be showing you today how to make a simple brush that serves me very well, and I think will serve you very well. But again, I will link some brush packs in the comments. You can mess around with a lot of different brushes and figure out which ones work best for you, but I think it can be easy to get hung up on brushes and think that you're just not using the right brush. At the end of the day, no brush is going to save your art, quote unquote. It's all about how you use it. At the end of, like, you can use the airbrush and make incredible art, or like I use this square brush, and this is my favorite brush, and it's the one I use for most of my paintings, and I would say it's a pretty excellent brush. It's the one I'm going to be talking about today, actually. So that's a general overview of the windows. Gradients is just the same thing as swatches, basically, but with gradients instead. And then patterns is just, this is more so for, again, graphic design work, but yeah. So then along the side here, we have general tools. So there's like the move tool and then the different select tools, which I will be showing in action throughout the project that I will be doing as a tutorial. Then the crop tool. Some of these tools are not important. The eyedropper tool, which you can use here, or you could just use the Option key on a Mac as a shortcut. Then a lot of these are for photo editing instead of art, but they can be used for art if you would like to. I think that knowing the photo editing tools in Photoshop is innumerably helpful. And then the brush, which is pretty much the one thing that you need to know, and the eraser, which is the other essential one, and the paint bucket, of course. So these three are like going to be your go-tos, and I plan to make more tutorials later explaining the photo editing ones in more detail and how you can use them in your art to enhance it. So I hope that wasn't too overwhelming. I know that that's a lot of information at once, but it's a very complicated and in-depth program. I know it can be scary, but I think that throughout this video, as you'll see me use it, I think that it'll make more sense. So this is the reference image I'll be using in this video. So I'm just copy and pasting it into Photoshop and resizing it with Control-T, putting it up in the corner, and I'm planning to paint Gloria Emily and William Afton in grayscale. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is going to image and adjustments, and I'm going to be making this black and white. So this is another, in addition to the adjustment panel here, this is sort of a quicker way, I would say, of achieving some of the adjustments that you can achieve there. So just press that and OK. And bam, you got a grayscale. So that's just because I think painting in black and white is a lot easier than painting with color, because color makes things complicated and value is easier to think with. So now today we're going to be painting with this amazing square brush. So let's talk about how to achieve such a beautiful, sexy little thing, right? How do you get these amazing blends? How do you do it, Indy? Yeah, but she's absolutely gorgeous. But basically, this is going to be a little tutorial on how to define a brush preset, or AKA how to make a brush. So I kind of horribly messed up this brush making tutorial, so I'm going to be quickly running over how to make it right now and hopefully not completely horribly messing it up. So, how to make a brush quickly and with the least amount of paint possible. So first, you're going to want to go to this selection tool and use rectangular marquee tool. And you are going to want to go up to fixed size and choose anything that is a square that's a reasonable size. I choose usually like 50 pixels by 50 pixels. You want it to be a square, and then just anywhere you want to go and fill it in with any color, black probably, and then leave it selected, go up to edit, and then define brush preset, sample brush. You can name it whatever you want. I called it square ass bitch in the past, but you can call it whatever. Let's call it friend shaped. And voila, you have a brush. You're going to want to go to brush settings now, and this is a real trust the process moment, so just follow what I'm saying and trust me, you will have the most beautiful brush. Spacing, 1%. Shape dynamics, check. Minimum diameter, 0%. Control on pen pressure. Transfer, on. Control, pen pressure, minimum, 0%. These is just one of those things you don't really have to understand it. It's sort of one of, like, if you think about what the words mean, it's kind of intuitive, but if you don't understand it, like, it doesn't really matter. And then, as you can see, you have a beautiful square brush to work with. And this blends beautifully, does everything beautifully. It is the most incredible brush to work with, and it paints incredibly. So this is so much simpler than the horrible tutorial that I gave in my original recording. So I'm just going to edit this in. So if the audio sounds different and everything, that's why. So now that you have your own beautiful painting brush, let's get into the actual process of making your own little painting in Photoshop now. So I hope that this will give some insight into my painting process too. I'm not going to be so much talking about how I go about making a painting in this video. This is more so just going to be showing how I use Photoshop as a program and trying to give a little overview of just what it's like to work with this program and using the interface and seeing the interface in action and how at least one person uses it. And hopefully that will help you in your journey of getting used to it. So I'm going to go into a speed lapse now, and hopefully I'll have music or something playing. And if not, that's because I got copyright stricken. So enjoy. Okay, so I'm going to introduce some new features and what I like to call stage 2 now of the art process, and these are some features that I haven't fully covered yet in this video and that are pretty helpful and that I like to call, quote, shortcuts when making art. They're not really shortcuts, they're just ways of using Photoshop that make making art easier and are part of the reason that I can get paintings out so fast. So I merged down these 2 layers, and as you can see now, all this is on one layer. Click this lock button to unlock this. So now you can see everything is on one layer, and I know that that stresses some people out, but really don't worry about it. Then you're going to go over to adjustments, and you're going to click not exposure, wrong, curves. So you can see you have this graph now, and this looks complicated, but it's really not that complicated. You're just going to start messing around with this until you get it to a point where you like it. So I don't really know fully what this means. I just like to keep my eyes on the main image and keep messing around with it until I like what it looks like. Yeah, I think that looks nice. I like to just make it so it's a little higher contrast so that I have more values to work with. Because the best thing to do in a painting, of course, is pushing values. I'll talk more about that when I make more videos on painting. But again, I'm going to merge visible, and it's all in one layer again. Then part 2 of this second stage of painting is going up here. I click the filter button, then I go to Liquify, and I start messing around and trying to make the proportions more realistic. It's important at this point that you are paying attention to the settings up here because you want the density to be about 30, the pressure to be around 19 to 20, and the size to be, whatever you want the size of the brush to be. And you want to be on this finger mode because these other ones will do all sorts of crazy stuff. And if these get weird, it's gonna start looking like really psychedelic, and it's a cool effect, but I like to use this for refinement and fixing proportions, and definitely not trying to go full psychedelic when I'm fixing proportions. So yeah, as you can see, it just adds a little improvement. And then you can go up to view, and I know a lot of people like to flip their canvas to make sure that everything is looking proportional both ways. I don't do this often, but yeah, I think it looks pretty good. So flipping it back, I'm just going to continue painting. So back to the speed paint. done now, and finally I'm going to show just a couple more finishing touches that will show a couple more features of Photoshop. So I'm going to duplicate this layer and again go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and just, blur a little bit. And then, it has blending effects just like any program does. By messing around with this, you can just get some interesting effects that will help blur out any imperfections with your blending. But I do like to leave a certain imperfection to my blending because I think that it adds a certain, painterly quality to it. I think that having a painterly quality is better than having a perfect look. So, yeah, I think that having it softened a little looks better. And then merge that down again. And then this is my favorite step. I add a noise filter, just a little bit, not too much. And as you can see, that just adds a little bit of variation. And that's pretty much how I complete a piece in Photoshop. I hope that that was informative. I hope that you learned something from that. And I hope that this was interesting to watch. I will be making more tutorials about how to use photo editing tools, how to edit cosplay photos in the future, more painting tutorials, line art tutorials, how to do some interesting photo editing effects, collage effects, and everything. And if you found this interesting, please like and comment, and let me know if you have any questions because I would love to answer. This is a topic I find very interesting and one that I like to say that I know a lot about, so I'd be really happy to help. Thank you for watching.